Great.
Awesome.
Hi, Lily.
Okay. So just a little housekeeping to begin with. My name is Zach Hendricks. I am the Long Range and Climate Action Assistant for Pitkin County. And everything that we've covered and will be covering going in the future is on our website. And it's pretty easy to get to. If you go to the Pitkin County website, click on Planning, Zoning, Building. And then the big purple button that says Growth Management Public Outreach Information will take you there. So up there you can see the vision statement that we've gotten from the BOCC. We have a brief explanation of the process. We have all of the tabs containing the relevant information to each topic. And so, you know, in the future, each one of these we think will be a separate discussion in and of itself. So that's why there's separate topics out there. I'll be posting meeting notes from them as well. And then the meeting recordings as well. As you know, this is live streamed. And so if you ever want to go back and watch what's happened in the past or rehear a point, you'll be able to see these here. We also have a citizen input section. So these are the ones that we've received so far as either video or writing, but we will be accepting these throughout the process. This first one today is on vision. However, if in the future we get into the exemptions or benefits or anything like that, and you want to share one that's specific to that topic, please feel free to submit that as well, and we'll keep it up there. And then we also have a link here to the YouTube channel. So all of this stuff is being put onto our YouTube channel. So if that's a nicer format for you, you can find it there as well. With that, that's the more of the technical stuff. When we get done sharing the visions, for all of you watching as an attendee, we will be giving you an opportunity to discuss or share or make any comments that you think are relevant, ask any questions. You'll have to raise your hand. To do so, you'll hit, if you're on your phone, it's *9 to raise your hand on your phone. If you're on the computer, there should be a little hand in the bottom center of your screen that you can click and it'll raise your hand. And that'll be how we know that you're ready. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen Sassana, who's our long range planner.
Thank you, everybody. For those of you who are here, we really appreciate you taking the time and effort to join us today. I'm going to start just by introducing our team here, and then I'm going to give a little bit of background why we're here today, and then we're going to we'll be launching into some vision statements that we've received from several of you, and looking forward to that. But to begin with, so I am Ellen Sassano. I'm the long range planner for Pitkin County. I think most of you know me, but there may be some of you out there who don't. Cindy Hubin is here joining us. She's the community development director. And as he just introduced himself, Zachary Hendricks is the long range planning climate action administrative assistant. And for today and for the duration of these meetings that we're holding, he will be the wizard behind the curtain. And we really appreciate his technical expertise in allowing us to make these meetings happen virtually. So as most of you know, the current planning Pitkin County Growth Management System was adopted in 1978. That's 42 years ago now. And we have scheduled this and 7 additional public outreach meetings on the topic of growth in Pitkin County. And really what we want to do is determine whether the tools and really the philosophy we have in place are still achieving community objectives. Managing growth is a complex and sometimes emotional topic. And we all tend to want to talk about what's not working and then jump to solutions. There will be time for that, but that's not what we're going to focus on today. In their wisdom, the Board of County Commissioners took a step back when we launched into this discussion about growth management and said, before we launch into details about changes that should be made to our current system for managing growth, let's come to some agreement on what our ultimate goal is in terms of vision for the community, looking ahead 20 to 40 years. The focus of today's meeting is just that, to gather input from all of you What do you envision as a goal or collective goals relating to growth for the Pitkin County community, looking down the road, let's say 20 years? To set the stage, the board collectively drafted the vision statement that you have on your screen, which I'll read to you. It says, utilize growth management and the land use code to create an equitable, sustainable, and resilient regional quality of life and economy for the future, and to meet our climate action objectives. This was really intended to be a starting point, to set the stage. Really what they wanted to do was initiate a broader discussion about what that long-term vision looks like from a community perspective. So as Zach said, we asked anyone who's expressed an interest in participating in this series of meetings to submit their vision to us, either in writing or as a video or as a statement that may be presented live here today. And we got several great responses. We'll spend roughly the next hour reviewing the responses we got, either presented by video or live by those who prepared them. Then we'll spend the following 40 minutes or so of the meeting working with you to try to capture the common themes and or conflicting themes that may have been expressed in these presentations. Then we'll plan to come back to you next week with as close to a collective vision statement as we can get for your review to see if we got it right. So that's what we have planned for the bulk of the meeting. We'll take 10 minutes or so at the end of the meeting to wrap up and talk about the process. So really, we want the bulk of this meeting to be used to hear what you all have submitted in terms of your visions for the future. And with that, I'll hand it back to Zach to get us started on the community vision presentations we've received from you thus far.
All right, the first one that we have is from Langdon Dresser, who we do have with us here today. And I'm going to go ahead and share that one with you all now.
Hello, I am Langdon Dresser, the senior at Colorado Rocky Mountain School and co-president of the student body there. I am quite interested in the current public outreach Pitkin County growth management process because as a 17-year-old who hopes to live a long time in the valley, I think creating an equitable, maintainable, and robust regional quality of life and economy for the future, as well as meeting our climate action objectives, are important issues to address now. For several years, I have been a volunteer and student at ACES, and had the opportunity to learn about and support climate action in relation to this valley and the current use of the landfill. Looking at the current research done by the City of Aspen Climate Action Office, I have learned about some of the possible reductions that can be implemented in a new and revised growth management initiative, such as mandating high-efficiency space and water heating equipment and high-efficiency air conditioning for building codes, implementing technology to greatly reduce the energy consumption of unoccupied second homes, and requiring energy-efficient upgrades for rental units. Using these techniques, according to their work, has the ability to reduce greenhouse gases by up to 86% over a 50-year period, which is part of my lifetime scope for our Roaring Fork Valley. I have also had the opportunity to learn about the usage and mitigation programs at the landfill. Increasing the adoption and use of these mitigation solutions has two important outcomes. First, it reduces the emissions produced by the landfill and as a whole is to continue supporting the world-class tourism destination.
So I apologize for that. I apparently muted the video on accident. So I'm going to go back a little bit and fix that. Apologize for the technical difficulties here.
It's hard
Sorry.
to hear you, Zach. It's hard to hear Langdon.
I am also interested in the current Pitkin County growth management process because I think the judicious use of PDRs has been a successful program, and I am curious to learn about how that growth management system could benefit Pitkin County and its residents and the economy into the future. My vision for the future of Pitkin County and the Valley as a whole is to continue supporting the world-class tourism destination through allowing residents full-time and part-time to have the flexibility to create and have their own desired home living styles and to thrive in the way that they wish within the necessary goals of an equitable, maintainable, and robust economy, as well as adhering to current greenhouse gas reduction goals. Just how to achieve those things is going to take a lot of work by all of us.
All right. I apologize, Langdon. I didn't mean to diminish your video. You did great work. So that is the first one. I do not believe that we have Kim Coates with us right now. I do not see her on the line, which means that Susan Caskey will be the next one sharing with us, and we have her live.
Hi. Zachary, is it possible for us to get a written statement from the person that we just heard from? Because the audio wasn't of greatest quality.
So
Yeah, we can give that to Zach and he can send that out.
Okay, that's great. Okay.
I was about to say, we also have him with us. So if any of you have any questions for him after we're done sharing, we do have him and he can share that way. And then the video itself is on YouTube and linked from our webpage. So you can go back and watch it again if you'd like.
I'd like to hear that or see it again, read it again.
And or we may be able to, if there's time, we could also play it again when everyone else has finished up, if that would be helpful.
Good. I had a lot of trouble. It was impossible for me to get my video into Zach. And so thank you, Zach, for letting me issue this today in this way, put it in the record. I am still thrilled and appreciative to live in a community which is willing to step a few yards away from itself every now and then in a sincere attempt to figure out where it is on the roadmap for now, and then take a pause before moving ahead in any direction. From an article titled "The Spirit of Place" from a website labeled placesconsulting.org comes this quote. In Roman mythology, natural places were thought to be inhabited by a residing spirit, the genius loci. We define the spirit of a place as the emotional connection people have made to the place, based on the distinctive qualities of landscape, cultures, and built environment. It is the people who infuse a place with a unique spirit. When people, this was especially important to me, when people feel richly connected to the places where they live, work, and play, they will invest more of themselves. They will participate in civic life, engage in issues that shape the future and the connection of a people to a place. It is a form of social capital, which is perhaps the single most important factor in whether a real community exists in a place. As an aside, I wonder if we're doing our best at giving people a chance at feeling richly connected to the places where they live, work, and play. If not, then we're all losing out. To have healthy places, we must find ways to keep alive what is distinctive and emotionally compelling there, which begins with understanding what those things are. That's the end of the quote. Some of our most outstanding and appealing products and harvest, those that we reap and we sell, are clean air, quiet places, arts and culture, our history, And especially important to me is character of place. We literally make money on character of place. We must continue to maintain, respect, bolster, and protect our unique character. It pays in more ways than one for us to fiercely protect both the goose and the golden egg. In the Aspen Area Master Plan of 2000, which was the update of our first character-based master plan in 1993, the 2000 plan states that it contains, in quotes, recommendations on economic sustainability that endeavor to make our community better without getting bigger. Now I wonder how we are living up to this. It is by preserving, maintaining, and growing character and by ongoing building of an engaged community that we may be able to accomplish this getting better without getting bigger. I can see no other feasible way. In envisioning our future development, I believe that we must strengthen in no uncertain way our past community commitment of requiring that growth pay its own way. Now, perhaps more than ever, we need assurance that the cost of growth are borne with accurate and true accounting by the development entity. This will require that our community reassess in the most rigorous way how we measure the up-to-date, real, true cost to the community of development. Of utmost importance now is that climate change costs must be borne by the developer, whether private or public. This is one of the ways that we can be assured that the development which occurs provides a full community benefit instead of becoming a community health burden or an economic burden. I believe that future development should occur within the urban growth boundary established in an earlier Aspen Area Master Plan. Since we have now documented that the larger the square footage of a residential structure, the more intense its needs are for services, I believe it is time to revisit the idea of house size. We need to visit the house size question informed by current realities of community balance, local affordable housing needs, climate change, and what we believe is essential for the healthy well-being of people who live here and people who are essential for our vitality. Pacing of development remains as important as ever. This community has agreed, evidenced by those that we elect, that the boom-bust way of growing is not for us, and we know why it is unhealthy. No one wins, and communities never remain healthy when trapped in those cycles. Further, a measured pace of development allows us wiggle room in which to respond to unintended consequences. I hope that in 30 years, this will be a community of largely local workers who can live in the same community in which they work, vote in the same community in which they work, feel valued and fully included. I envision a place where local people can afford to buy underwear and food. I hope we will have found ways to encourage more locally owned businesses. That is the prime way we will be able to keep local dollars multiplying and recirculating rather than being sent out to people and companies and corporations we will never meet or know. A few other questions that come to mind are, now that the pandemic has come on stage, has our thinking changed about who we rely on most for our well-being? And are we taking care of all those community members in ways that are fair and just and kind? Or could we do it better? In commencing a broader and more comprehensive look at growth in Pitkin County, can we learn to ask the question, who benefits? Who pays? In fact, I wonder if we could learn to examine all decisions in this way. Perhaps most important of all to me is that we need to decide when to stop growing in size. We must finally ask the question of how many people our natural and man-made resources can support. What can we tolerate in terms of numbers of people, effects on healthcare services, law enforcement, crowding, traffic, and change to climate? Do we have the fortitude to say when enough is enough? We have recently taken stock of our needs at the airport. I think it would be wise to plug that planning into the larger planning growth puzzle now and imagine and plan for the results of that development. In pondering the questions we are being asked about growth, pacing, rate of growth, types of growth, and the ways climate challenges climate change challenges us to reconsider our responsibilities to our community and to our world, I believe it is time for a comprehensive examination and update of the Aspen Area Master Plan. Thank you to the BOCC for allowing us this opportunity to think about these important questions again.
Thank you, Suzanne. I do have Kim Coates with us as well now. I'm just bringing her in real quick. She might be having some slight technical difficulties. But Kim, if you're ready, you can go ahead and share. If not, we can move on to the Postmans and Lily Jones. I think she's still getting set up, so we'll come back to her when she's gotten her bearings real quick. So it is now on to the Postmans and Lily Jones.
Hello, that is Lily Justice, by the way. That's her name. We don't really have anything prepared, but we just wanted to be here.
So, ideas, thoughts about what you've heard so far? Anything? My daughters are looking at me with shooting arrows at me.
So I think we're just listening here today. Sorry. Oh, yeah, if you both are unmuted, we're going to get that reverb back at the same time. So I guess then we will move on. Kim, if you are ready to share, the stage is yours, or we can move on to the next one if you'd like a little bit more time to get set up. All right. I think we're going to move on to the next one. So the next one we have is a video from Sarah Garten, and she was took this video on Cindy's front porch. So let's see.
Something, there's open space, it's like across the border. So I hope very much that in 20 years, we still have that respect for open space, which to me reflects on the ranching heritage, and of course the beautiful vistas for the mountain. People relax right away. It's difficult because our development should be along the corridors in order to be near transportation hubs and to be near services, especially with what has happened with our pandemic. I realize how important it is for people not to travel too far to be serviced. They need not just grocery stores, but there should be a hardware store. There should be different dry goods and other kinds of supplies that you can do. So that's kind of a conundrum, is how do you keep open space and then still have these hubs for servicing and living and medical. So that is going next to the kinds of buildings you design in communities. I hope very much there's room to do live work spaces. That is very important, and I'd like to see it also combined with communities that welcome everyone from my age, I'm 78, all the way down to families and children and working people. I like the mix, and I hope that I think it can help each other, especially when you live in a community like that. You care for each other, and I help care for the children, and they help care for me. I hope too that somehow in the zoning, that it could be allowed to do what we tried in Aspen, but I think is a failure, the accessory dwelling unit. I don't think it has to fail. Something that actually is one reason I went off of planning and zoning is that I was frustrated because they were not required to occupy. That is a big mistake. They turned into workout rooms and big recreation centers for people, video media centers. So I think with what's happening with our growing population and with older people needing and wanting to be near their families, that somehow this could be accomplished. But also I think what we can do is penalize or tax people if they're not occupying. Even if it isn't a family member, somehow that could work. I hear trust around, and I think New York City might even be considering this, that you tax, property taxes are already very high in cities like New York, but there should be some sort of a surtax. If you have a big building or a big apartment and it's never lived, or it's lived in maybe 4 weeks a year or 3 weeks a year, they're looking into how you can tax that person because they're still being provided with city services. They are a hardship at the community because they're taking away people's living space or working space. So they have an impact, even though there's no one inside the apartment. And I'd like to see that change somehow. I love in Pitkin County that we have access to our rivers. And there's such respect for the trail systems, and these trails keep being added. So keep that going. The Rio Grande Trail is an amazing and popular trail, but it concerns me because I have friends that have been badly injured and almost killed because of the intermingling of the different kinds of people that use the trail. And so I think I like that bike trails are separate from pedestrian trails. And let's see what else. Invest in technology so that there's good Wi-Fi. I'm so glad to see 5G, I think it's called, happening. And I would like to see that the county be open to more and more of that because there's going to be telemedicine. There's going to be more education at home and working from home. So we need all the good technology communication we can get. Encourage full communities. North Star and Corsi Point are so important that nothing should happen to them. For me, they are the bookends of our community. Cozy Point reminds me of our old ranching heritage. So that's something I had wanted to say too, that we encourage and make it possible for organic and local farming. And North Star, don't let it turn into Rockaway Beach. It's a very important wetland, wilderness, coming out of the mountains, and people coming over the pass must just ease into Aspen with that wonderful entry.
Good morning. Thank you guys all for coming. We are very excited today to.
Sorry about that. We have two more, and just to address you, Michael, I am seeing everybody's comments in the chat. I apologize if I'm not responding quite. I'm doing a little bit of juggling here. But you will have an opportunity to share when we have finished. We have two more videos from Nyala Honey and one from Bill Sterling. And then you'll have an opportunity to share. Kim, you'll have an opportunity as well. I saw your comment in the chat as well. So the next one that we have is Nyala Honey. And I will go ahead and get that one going.
The future of Pitkin County depends on its community. There are two things that I see when I imagine the future of Pitkin County. I see two issues that I want to see end: racism and climate change. Pitkin County is full of fantastic people, and I know that we can make Pitkin County a place we are proud of. Racism is not just in bigger, more heavily populated places like New York or LA. It is right here in our county. And that is something that needs to change immediately. It shouldn't matter how you look. We are all people, each and every one beautifully unique and special. No one should be treated differently just because they have more melanin in their skin. They're just a person like you, a person who laughs and loves and lives. It doesn't matter what is on the outside. You have to look for what is on the inside, and chances are you will find something amazing. If you are a white person watching this video, I want to ask a favor of you. I want you to listen to the stories of people of color who have faced racism. I want you to learn what they have gone through. And I want you to reflect. Is this what you want Pitkin County and America to be? Please think before you talk, text, post, or tweet. To you, your words might seem fine, but put yourself in someone else's shoes. Could they hurt someone else? Everyone has feelings, and those feelings need to be respected. I know that together we can shape the future of Pitkin County and end racism in our county and our world. Climate change is an imminent threat to human society. Global temperatures are rising, and there is no turning back. This is a catastrophe. The rise in global temperature is being caused by humans. We are the reason for this. Our cars keep emitting carbon, and pollution is worse than ever. If climate change keeps accelerating, hundreds more species will go extinct. Every single day, lots of species die out, and that number is climbing. Glaciers and ice caps are melting, which is causing a huge problem for polar bears and other Arctic animals. And every second, 1.5 acres of rainforest are cut down, which releases carbon dioxide, which is one of the main factors of climate change. So, you see, our county is good, but it could be better. When I envision Pitkin County's ideal future, I see a 100% renewable county that accepts every single person as beautiful and unique. We can't just talk any longer. We need to take action. We need to have more electric, eco-friendly buses so we are not riding our cars as much. We need to make our buildings net zero. I am certain that if every person in Pitkin County unites to fight these crises, we will turn Pitkin County into everything it needs to be. I am so grateful that I got the chance to share my thoughts and hopes. As a child, I don't think I get this opportunity often enough. Children are powerful. They aren't afraid of the truth, and they set their sights high. Every child should be able to share their thoughts and hopes about Pitkin County, racism and racial justice, and climate change. To make change, we need every person, and that includes kids. To all the kids watching this video, you are important, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You are greatly needed to make this county better. Always know that you matter. To all the adults watching this video, children matter. If we're going to make a change, we need to involve them too. Thank you for letting me share what I hope for Pitkin County. Can we do this together? I think we can. We just have to make it happen.
All right, and then the last one that we have is from Bill Sterling.
I said thank you for asking me to chat with you.
I'm a co-founder of CORE, the Community Office of Resource Efficiency, and we've been participating with you and your colleagues, Zach and Alan Sassano particularly, and the BOCC on updating the energy code and passing new zoning regulations, which you have just recently succeeded in getting through the BOCC. And I think the BOCC has really been very aggressive and very smart. Instituting the growth management plan years ago and all the land use regulations that kind of came along with it completely heightened our lifestyle and our way of proceeding with life. And as a result of that, the resort town has really thrived. And I see sort of 10 key things that happened, and then I'll tell you how I think that shapes what's ahead for us. First is the GMQS, the Growth Management Plan, that came about in the 70s by those very revolutionary, futuristic county commissions, particularly Dwight and Ed, and then Michael. And then the next most brilliant thing was really the rural and remote legislation, because what it did was it protected the edges of the wild habitat from the human habitat and pushed the humans back. And I think that was just utterly brilliant. And then the Historic Preservation, HPC as we call it, Commission being codified, and then protecting all those buildings and giving the town the kind of feeling that it has, was really key. And then the Aspen Modern that followed that, almost 25 years later, which protected sort of Bauhaus and postmodern and ski town sort of early development, so that we had a chance to see if we wanted to protect a lot of that too. Then open space protection has been just fundamental, and particularly the Pitkin County Board of Open Space on the public side, and I'd say the Aspen Valley Land Trust probably on the private side, and then RAFTA, and then affordable housing. Those are the things that really define where we are now over 5 decades. And I mean, for example, you know when you hit Pitkin County, when you pass Holland Hills coming south towards Aspen, it's a whole new world. There's nothing developed on either side of the road that you've had for the last 26 miles. So the feeling that we have created, it didn't happen by accident. It happened by the combination of the spirit of the town and public officials really taking responsibility. 85% of the county is public land, and we have to always keep fighting against any issues, any proposals to put it under state control or even put it under county control. That's how we're going to keep the kind of the ambiance and feeling. So in 20 years, with hope, I think the town should and will look pretty much the same. If it looks the same, I think that would have been a great step forward. Now the pace has to be accelerated. We just can't do it incrementally. I think as we're kind of proceeding now, I think you're moving expeditiously, but I think the pace has to come even faster. Because I mean, there's really 4 things. I mean, there's the epidemic now that's changed the world. But what we've seen by the epidemic is that the whole world has taken action over one point of view about the epidemic. And it's not going to get over sooner. I mean, we may be wearing face masks for the next 5 years. Who the hell knows? But the second thing that is on us is population control. Every day, 225,000 people are born. And we're going to be overwhelmed with a carrying capacity that is beyond what we can deal with. The third thing is climate control. And so everything that we can do that's coupled with what you're doing is tied to climate control, in my view. But 2 of the issues that we've really got to respond to are first traffic. And what we've learned during this period is that who are the biggest employers and what draws the most people to town every day? Pitkin County and Aspen are the 2 biggest probably, and the ski company in the winter probably, and then maybe the Aspen Idea Resort, all the visionary and intellectual things that go on in the summer probably second. Maybe we can keep more people working at home and less of them on the road. The last big issue, which is not really being addressed at all, is water. Water has to be dealt with. We're the first users of it, So we're sort of innocently thinking that we don't have to really pay attention to it. But we've got to begin to think about that at the same time we're doing all these other things.
All right. So just let me get reset real quick. All right, so Michael Miracle has requested to give his vision real quick live. So I'm gonna bring you in for the discussion. If anybody else wants to participate, give their vision live. We're gonna have a discussion on the vision of the group as a whole after this. Please just raise your hand and I will bring you into the discussion. Again, if you're on your computer, there should be a little hand at the bottom center of your screen of the Zoom application that'll allow you to raise your hand. If you're on the phone, you can hit *9 and that will raise your hand on that function. So we should have Michael with us now. He's probably just getting his bearings and then he'll be good to go ahead and share his vision for Pitkin County.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you see me? You can't see me, Greg. Okay, thank you, Zach, for letting me weigh in real time like this. I'm not so much going to express a specific vision as just sort of outline a few things that I hope this process can consider, and also just to heartily applaud that the effort is being made. So first, Cindy, I want to say, and to the rest of the staff and to Greg representing the commissioners, this is super important. It's really long overdue. So I am so grateful that you're doing this. In many ways, I feel like so much of what I've focused on as my job as the community engagement director for SKICO has been trying to understand and unpack the concerns that drive the community's anxieties around growth. And so I think this is wonderful. I think, when we talk about growth as a community, we tend to put an outsized emphasis naturally on anything that goes through a land use process. So airport, Lift 1A, any hotel project, anything that might require a variance. And that has sort of continued to frame the narrative around community concerns as being a resort community-driven tension. But we have had another sector emerge in this economy for over the last 30 years that has dramatic and outsized impacts that have gone largely unscrutinized, and that is the second home industry. It does not get that scrutiny because it rarely goes through a land use process. And this process we're in is finally that land use process. It's finally that same level of scrutiny that any even modest sort of hotel project would have to go through. And there's evidence of this all around us. And I think Bill's video in some ways just proved this point, is that he framed it as what's driving people wanting to come into town, and that it's resort, it's music festival, and it's large employers. There is an employment sector of the second home industry that doesn't just go to one building that makes itself obvious. It disperses all over the place. And here's something to consider. So I have a chart up on my screen that I'm happy to share that goes from 1993 to 2016 that shows how many cars, the Castle Creek Bridge crossings, rafter ridership, and skier visits, all in the same chart, sort of tracking those lines together. And it has the rafter ridership broken out by commuter riders. So not city buses, not ski buses, but the commuter ridership. So from 93 to 2016, the rafter commuter ridership went from 888,000 riders to 2.5 million riders. That's a substantial increase in the number of people coming into town. As we know, the Castle Creek Bridge crossings have remained largely under that red line I think it's whatever it is, 23,000 something. We've kept it below that line. Skier visits have been largely flat over that I have it going to 2016. So over that 23-year period, they've grown by 4% over the whole length of that time. So when you look at the boom in the rafter ridership, you look at skier visits being largely flat, and you ask yourself, well, what is the driver for so many more people coming into town? What industry has grown dramatically? I think it's obvious. It's the second home industry. And I think that for that reason, and one thing about those commuter numbers, resort behavior patterns have drifted in the direction that we want to see, which is people taking the bus into town. Second home industry serving, whether construction or service after the fact, the number that Gabe shared last week, that 2,900 jobs will be generated just on the service side, not on the construction side, will be generated by build out. That is a lot of vehicle trips that you cannot get onto transit, even if you try. If you ride a bus in the morning, you will see that it is full of hotel workers. If you get on a bus, as I do sometimes at 7:30 at 8th Street when I go to Rotary, it is full of hotel workers riding the bus to go work at hotels. If you drive out of town these days, just look at the line of cars coming in the morning and ask yourself, how many of these are obviously construction vehicles? It is jaw-dropping some days. You'll see 15 Ford F-150s with ladders on them in a row. And with that, I want us to ask ourselves the community character question. Aspen Area Community Plans, the 2012 and the one before that, both said both expressed concern about this drift in our economy of becoming defined by the second home industry. I think we need to ask ourselves, what are the community character impacts of this shift? They're everywhere. The Hotel Lanedo, gone. The power of the second home industry can buy a whole hotel, tear it down, and put a residence in its place. The Boomerang Lodge, sitting as blight now for 17 years. Second homes going up all around it, including multiple homes being carved into the side of Shadow Mountain, which bring years of construction trips. And several of them are pure spec projects. They get rented out on VRBO, they function as lodging, they bring vehicle trip impacts. They go through no public process to say, do we want this or do we not want this as a community? I could go on. When I shared in the chat last time, just to the admins, when my son was at the Yellow Brick in daycare, there were 15 other fathers who were there picking up their kids. Out of those 15, I was one of only 2 who were not in a second home serving job. They were painters, constructions. I'm not condemning this industry at all. I'm just saying that we have not scrutinized the impacts on the things that we care about, vehicle trips, and also the community character impact of our town being increasingly defined by this industry. Folks on these jobs, they flow in and out of town every day. They go to job sites. They might go to City Market or Clark's to get some lunch, and then they flow back out of town. They don't really connect with the people in place in a way that they might. And again, that's just nature of the job. I'm not fundamentally criticizing it. I'm just saying we have not unpacked this anywhere near to the degree of granularity that we should. I think that we should. And I'll finish by saying thank you again to Cindy and everybody for initiating this process.
All right, Mona Newton has joined us as well. I believe she wishes to share. Again, if you wish to share or participate in the discussion that's going to be following these presentations of visions or what they wish to see addressed, either raise your hand using the raise hand button. It's just a big hand. In your Zoom application, if you're on your phone, you can hit *9. If none of that is working, you can also send me an email at Zachary, ZACHARY.Hendricks HENDRIX@pitkincounty.com, and I'll be sure that you are able to participate. With that, it's all you, Mona.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Zach, for coordinating this. And Cindy, I know this is this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart, and it's difficult to take on. It's difficult to talk about growth management. And I'm just to let everybody know, I'm with CORE. I'm the director of the Community Office for Resource Efficiency. And for over 26 years, we have been working together with this City of Aspen, Pitkin County, Town of Basalt, Holy Cross Energy, Town of Carbondale, and Glenwood Springs. And we've been working on energy efficiency and renewable energy in to be constructed and existing buildings. And I really appreciate how the county has utilized the climate action plan and the emissions inventory as a touchstone to indicate what needs to be done and how we need to address carbon emissions in the community, and that's through buildings. And this growth management process is really another huge step. I think it can be a huge step in helping us think about emissions in the community. And Michael, you just addressed something that an area that I think is really important, and that relates to the second homes, and it relates to house size, and it relates to the transportation, and it also relates to the percentage of occupancy in our community, which contributes to the community character. And I think those of us who live here want to see a continued community character and not something that becomes more of a ghost town. The numbers that were shown last week, where 17,000 full-time homeowners live here and then 55,000 people come into the community, that's a huge influx of people that come in and out of the town, and we're feeling it especially during the summer. It does contribute to the economic vitality, and I understand that in all of the businesses support it. But I really think that it's important to ask that question about how are we actually going to reach the goals that our students, our young environmentalists have really laid out so articulately, that will be their future. And that's a community that we want to preserve, and we want to have clean air. We want to have wildlife. We want to have the beautiful mountains that we come here that provide us our clean air and clean water. And so I thank you for doing that. I don't have a specific objective or a specific recommendation, but I think that this is great start. It's a community process, and we will participate and we'll support the city and the county as we move forward to try to hammer out some recommendations and decisions that I'm hoping the community will be able to embrace for our future. So thank you.
Thank you, Mona. I do not see anyone else with their hands raised. I don't see any other people indicating they want to in chat. Again, you can either raise your hand or send me a chat message, or you can email me at zachary.hendricks@pitkincounty.com, and we'll get you in on the discussion. But since we've concluded the vision sharing, I'm going to turn this back over to Ellen to begin the discussion.
So thanks, everybody. That was a great expression of everybody's perspectives on what makes this community work, and what we need to continue to work on. So what we'd like to do, let's see, it's 11 o'clock and we're scheduled to go till noon. And what we'd like to do then is to see if we can come together on some common themes that we've been hearing, so that we can pull together a collective vision statement from this group. And when we started, Zach had the vision statement that the Board of County Commissioners have collectively put together. It was on the screen. And that was intended to be a starting place before we launch into specific changes that need to be made to our growth management approach and policies. We really want to make sure that we have a long-term vision to start from so that we can continue to go back to check in to make sure we're moving in that direction or in the right direction. So I think it would be most helpful to hear from you about what you are hearing, what you have heard today, as far as common themes go in these vision statements and presentations. So we can start with the Board of County Commissioners vision statement to see if it's on track, and or we can just open the discussion up to begin with to all of you to start to highlight what you see as the really pertinent, most important themes that we need to be focusing on moving into the future as we reinvent our managing growth tools. So is there anybody out there who would like to start by throwing out some common themes that seem to just pop out for you? If not, we'll go ahead and, staff can always jump in and.
I'll go if I may. Can you hear me?
Great. That would be great. Yeah, we'll jump in as need be, but really we'd like to hear from you all.
Yeah. So just I think one thing Suzanne, sorry, struck me that maybe kind of connected with what I was saying, and that is for residential to function like residential. I feel like residential has started to have use patterns and behave like something other than someone's home. It has an almost, it can get turned on as lodging. I didn't even mention that, but we've had a shadow lodging sector emerge through VRBO that is like the equivalent of having 6 limelights open. We pull our hair out over a hotel because it goes through a public process. Yet over 20 years, 6 limelights open, and they open at a high level of impact because people are driving. If you're renting a house on Red Mountain, you're driving your car to it. You don't have someone guiding you in how you interact with the community. You just kind of get in your car and you try to figure it out. I think that anyway, if that's a neat way to summarize it, that what should residential function like? Should it be generating 20 service trips a day when no one is even staying in the home after it's been built? I don't think we've begun to unpack the impacts there at all.
So Michael, are you suggesting that there should be that the local residential community should be more prevalent, not prevalent, but there should be a focus on the local residential community? Is that?
Not necessarily, because I'm not saying you should turn off second homes. I'm just saying that I don't think we have come to terms with how their use patterns have changed over 30 years. It used to be that someone had a second home, they would come and stay in it, and then they would leave. And now if you just ride your bike around the West End, the number of service trips that are generated, and that's just the West End. Like in the county, these homes get bigger, and the landscaping gets bigger, and the lawns get bigger, and they need full-time property managers. And I'm not necessarily saying what should be done. I don't think we're grappling with those impacts at all from a just impact standpoint of how many vehicle trips they generate, which Gabe did mention the number of jobs last week that build out would create, but also the character impacts about, what do we want the town to feel like and be like, and the people who are flowing in and out of the town for work, how do we want them to be interacting with the place? So the neatest way is what you've just typed there for me is, I don't want to say as explicitly as you have there that a house should not be VRBO or commercial use, But, you know, I mean, Aspen right now is just way behind on getting its head around regulating this stuff. Like, I would just say, like, you know, residential should behave as residential. If it's going to act like commercial, if it's going to act like lodging, it needs to have a different conversation around it. And I think the third sentence that you've started there, what should be the intensity of use generated from a home, need to address. I think that's well stated.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Michael. And yeah, as you can see, Zach is going to take notes as we go. So,
Sorry, we did have Nancy Nevin, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, join us now. You have the ability to mute and unmute yourself. And we also had Sam Barney, mute and unmute yourself if you want to comment. All of you that have been promoted into panelists, you now have the ability to control your video and your mute. Just would request that if someone's speaking, you wait for them to finish before you jump in, because obviously Zoom gets pretty garbled when multiple people are talking.
Okay, thanks, Zach. And I'll say this is all new to me. Thanks to Cindy for inviting me to be a part of this. I've lived in Aspen for 22 years and have not been involved on a community board in any way. But what is kind of striking me in listening to the conversation today is, as Michael said, the tension between the resort community and the full-time residents. And I think that it's, it comes out, especially now in this COVID pandemic, there's an us versus them. And I feel like that's growing. And if we are going to define what the character of the community is going to look like, then somehow we have to integrate that vision to the second homeowners. Otherwise, we can't dictate it to them, but they come here because of the character, and yet their presence and their way of living impacts the character. And so there's a lot of different tensions there, and I don't know what the answer is, but I just want to raise that as something, as a consideration.
great, thanks. Thank you, Nancy. I think there was someone else queued up who wanted to speak.
Sam Barney has joined us, and then I think Phi also just joined us.
Hi, this is Sam Barney. How is everyone? So I failed on the video. So the assignment here was to provide my vision of growth and the future of land use for Pitkin County. Put a little bit of thought into it. I think the word sustainability gets thrown around quite a bit, and I had a former college professor come up and do one of the SKICO talks. I want to say it was the winter before last, and he was working on a new program of regenerative, and I thought that was an interesting concept. I'm also seeing that word being used with agriculture, and I think I would like to embrace the regenerative more so than the sustainable. I mean, I think sustainable is great, but we've obviously done a lot of impact and damage to the environment here, which is a big part of the character of our community. I think that sustainability is good from a business perspective. We want businesses that can thrive here. I don't like to think of things in terms of how we can grow things, how we can make them bigger. I like to think of things in how do we make things more efficient and better. And I think that comes into what I do for an occupation. I work in the construction industry. We're trying to create more efficient and tighter constructed buildings. I think it goes back to the waste discussions that we had in the last round of meetings, which were how do we change the way we look at materials and the life of those materials, and what happens to those materials when they're no longer useful. Can manufacturers take those back? I think that's a way to address the issue that we have with the landfill. So that's how I'd like to view the future anyway. Try to figure out a way to make it regenerative, try to figure out a way to create less waste, how to create buildings that produce their own energy and more energy than they need, so we can put that back into the grid and be water efficient. These are all things that we're going to have to address because we have a resource issue related to population growth, and there's not going to be enough to go around if we don't figure out a way to address that. So those are my comments. Thank you for letting me participate.
Hey, Sam, can I get you to elaborate on what you mean by regenerative?
So in terms of regenerative agriculture, there's a general thing going on where we have loss of topsoil, right? So, using specific crops, you only have so many harvests left is the way that I'm understanding it. I'm not an expert on this. It's just some things that I've read. And so there are some plant types that can be used, and not just plants, animals. If you have bison in an area, the bison actually can restore areas of the prairie, is the way that I understand it as well. So looking at the system of what we're planting, how we're planting it, where we're planting it, can basically reverse the issue of what's going on with topsoil. I think the same thing can be applied to architecture. You can create buildings that use living systems instead of septic tanks. You can, capture your own stormwater, to a certain extent legally. There are ways to do this. People are doing it. I think it's just a matter of spreading the word and making it more mainstream. And, eventually, I think the younger generations are going to pick up on this and they'll move it forward.
I believe Bill Sterling had his hand up as well.
And Zach,
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Zach?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Sam's mention of the word regenerative and along with sustainability, I think is really, really a very fundamental point. CORE was founded on energy efficiencies back in 1994. And in the process of the evolution of CORE, of which I was a co-founder and am still on the board, and Mona's comments, almost 70% of the carbon footprint in the Roaring Fork Valley comes from the built environment. Pitkin County and the ComDev department is addressing new buildings by moving ever closer to net zero programs for building. So that's gonna really begin to address those issues of those big houses, and we still have to come to grips with house size. But I think Michael's point about the second homeowners is brilliant. They've got a carbon footprint that's enormous. The use of Airbnb can be done totally outside of any control or understanding by the local community. So there has to be there may need to be a subcommittee that really begins to address the second homeowner issue. For example, many second homeowners don't even pay taxes on their rentals. And they're required now by law in the city, at any rate, to register and be licensed. And the license costs a certain amount of money, and then they have to pay the city taxes for all rentals that are under 30 days. So how can this be enforced? And how can we bring it under control? I mean, the whole issue that we're talking about, Zach, I raised one of the questions from the opening meeting is heating sidewalks and driveways seems excessive, but that may only be in the short run, and the owner pays for those. But what it does is then you don't need people to shovel the walks. You don't need people to shovel the roofs if you've got heat tapes in the gutters and in certain locations on the roofs. So this is kind of a balancing act that's really, really important for us. And on the larger scale, the 800-pound gorilla is, as someone had mentioned, not that metaphor, but it's the whole issue of climate change. We have seen what the whole world can do in the face of a novel virus that affected the entire planet. No matter how long this lasts, and it'll last longer than we would like it to, we will eventually get it under control. If we could respond to climate change in the same way that we're responding to this pandemic, that to me is the only way we can, as a planet, survive and keep something like what we've been accustomed to as a quality of life over the last 100 years. And so the whole issue of fossil fuels and electrifying things and electric cars, electric bicycles, that's the direction we've got to go. But you have to understand that even if you have an electric car and you charge the battery, what is the source of energy for that charging? Well, let's say if it's Holy Cross, there's still 35% that is not green energy, 35 to 40%. So we just have to work on all of these fronts. And I just think some great points have been made. I mean, Suzanne brought that up in her points, but Michael really hit the nail on the head with this second home issue. And I think it can't just be seen as part of the process. I think it almost needs to be addressed separately. Thank you.
This is Fi Filerman, and I also work for CORE. And I just have a couple of comments. Kind of building on the second home ownership, I just facilitated a neighborhood committee for my neighborhood on second homes and short-term rentals. And what really struck me about one of the issues is the agendas are so different from people who live in a community full-time versus those who own a property to rent it. And that was a huge challenge. And it affects the whole relationships between you and your neighbors and accountability and expectations. So on top of the climate change issues and the traffic and things, there's that component as well, which I think is a challenge. And the other piece I haven't heard anyone mention is Pitkin County's role regionally. When we start talking about equity and climate change and carbon reductions, what Pitkin County does affects the whole valley and kind of those patterns throughout the whole valley. So I guess I would challenge us to, throughout this process and the visioning, keep that in mind. And how does that play a role in terms of those, it's not just those goals for Pitkin County, that does have a larger impact on the region. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, Michael here. Just want to echo that, if I may, that, I think that, again, if we're thinking in 25, 30 years ago framings, the second home industry was largely an up valley phenomenon, mostly Aspen condos and snowmass. This is now a full valley-wide phenomenon. And it's why, if you're seeing, single family homes in Carbondale go for $700,000. It's, we're now, I think, in this valley in the most distorted real estate market in the world. And the buying power of money that is not made driving the price of housing is the primary distorting factor. And I don't know what you do about that, but I think we've got to be talking about it.
So those are all great great thoughts. Is there anybody else? I'm looking at the chat, chat list here. Is there anybody else who would like to weigh in? No, okay. Well, that's a great.
Real quick, I believe Greg has his hand up. He can mute or unmute himself, though he doesn't need us to do it.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Ellen. And thank you all for running this. I don't want to weigh in here too much because as a commissioner, I think I'm supposed to be hearing what you're all saying and receiving it. I did have a few observations that I'd love to add, and if it's okay. If I step out of line, Cindy, just like give me the high sign, wave, do this or something, or Ellen. I can see Cindy on my screen. So thanks, Cindy, Zelen, and ACT for putting this together. Very much appreciated and timely. This is important, and it's so great to see the usual suspects, I might say, the people who are concerned in our community who are involved here, Suzanne, Bill, Michael, Mona, everyone who's on here that I've seen so far. I'm so grateful that you're all here. Some words that come up that I'd love to just throw out, which I haven't seen today, but I know I've heard Cindy talk about steady state, rather than maybe, along with sustainable, rather than a growth oriented economy and community. What does steady state mean? What would that mean for us? The other things I wanted to point out is that, what we were dealing with 20 or 30 years ago, the world has changed, as we know, so dramatically that I think we need to talk about with this pandemic, for instance. We've seen they're suggesting maybe 3 to 5 years leap forward in the technology of teleconferencing. Meetings such as this being done online have changed the world. 3 to 5 years growth in maybe 3 months. And so what we're seeing now is people's work habits are changing. Case in point, I brought up a couple times. I had dinner a couple nights ago with some friends from New York who've decided to move here. They've said that 80% of their friends in New York do not plan to return. They've fled because they realize they can do their jobs in the tech industry, the finance industry, banking. They can do their jobs from anywhere. And so why not be in Aspen? That's the rationale. As you have all probably noticed, we have a real estate boom going on. The rental market is hotter than it was last year. Things are starting to happen and move here. We have a lot of interest in people who would like to isolate in Aspen, Colorado, or the Roaring Fork Valley. So second home ownership is not going to go away. So it's a very timely topic. The other thing that I think is changing, not as quickly, but as you've all pointed out, climate change. What if the rain-snow line that often happens between Basalt and Aspen, or maybe Glenwood and Basalt, moves up to, say, halfway up Little Nell? What if the bottom of Spar Gulch, anything below that is wet and soggy rain, and everything above that is snow? What is that going to do to our ski industry and how we work for, one, water supplies, recreation, things like that? How are we going to look at the way we approach our industry, because the ground under our feet is changing? And so that's the long emergency we're looking at. I won't go into detail beyond that. I think I wanted to leave it with a quote that one of my favorite quotes I have up on the wall in the bathroom. It's from Buckminster Fuller. It says, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." Buckminster Fuller. You think about what Tesla has done, what Elon Musk has done with Tesla, what some of the other innovators have done, what Steve Jobs did with the iPhone, what some of the other people have done with technology, and how they've changed the world completely. We're seeing this happen much more rapidly now. And I think that my biggest frustration when I first came on as a commissioner was being told things couldn't be done because they'd never been done that way. Oh, you can't look at the European model for how to control growth or second home ownership because we have laws that are different than Europe, so just don't even try. I thought, no. We need to go back and look at what's happening elsewhere and see if there are things that we could try based on what other people have done. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We can look around the globe at other high density, high pressure resort areas and see. And John McBride speaks about that a lot, as well as others in the community, that there's a town called, is it St. Ives in England that has limited second home ownership to a certain percentage. Maybe it's all RO now. I think Stad may have done that in Europe, or clusters, or some of these places where they had a high influx of second homeowners and money, and they decided they wanted to preserve their culture, their local resort culture, which was what made it so attractive. Could we do that here? I don't know, but I don't like being told no. I know that for sure. I think that's about it. The other thing finally is also valley-wide solutions. Somebody mentioned, Phi mentioned, we could say we limit second home ownership, but the rest of our valley doesn't. Say we change things up here, but it changes the commuter culture. What does that do to the rest of our community? So valley-wide solutions. Is it here to Glenwood? Is it here to Carbondale? Is it here to Parachute? What are we going to have to do in order to make something that works in a steady state, sustainably regenerative for our valley? It's a tough call, but this is the group that can do it if anyone can. And I'm so grateful to be part of it. But I did want to challenge you all when we're talking about how things worked or how we changed it before, is we're in a different world now. The rain snow line's above our heads now, where before it wasn't. How will that change the way we look at land use? So I don't want to be redundant. I'll hang up now. Thank you all for your comments.
Ellen, this is Cindy. Could I hop in for a sec?
Absolutely, yes.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I was just trying to follow up on some of the comments that we've heard so far today and try to make sure that we're capturing everything that we've heard. First of all, thank you. I'm so inspired. I mean, the thought that went into some of your comments have just been incredible, and been taking lots of notes to think about how we incorporate these things. But with Zach taking notes, I want to make sure that we've captured everybody's thoughts correctly. And one of them, when I heard Nancy speak, I thought that maybe Nancy was thinking that there was some way that we look at imparting an expectation, if you will, on our visitors or our people who want to have, quote, second homes here. And so I think that it comes into play that there's an expectation that the community has about visitors and second home owners. And that right now it's in our minds, it's our expectation, but how do we then combine maybe that with what Greg was saying in terms of building a new model that people would follow instead of trying to, change people and who they are? How do we build a model that is something that makes sense, that we want people to look at? And there's Greg's quote. We'll have to get that written down and make sure that we've got Buckminster Fuller's quote there, because it's a good one. So I just wanted to make sure that that's what Nancy was thinking, and if Nancy's still on the line, she can confirm that or not. And then I heard and I saw Kim's quote and about Greg's comment that, yeah, let's look at other communities. So if there's the thing that I want to ask everyone is, what more information do you think we as staff should be pulling together for you? Look at other communities around the world, what they're doing, what some of their solutions have been. I know I've been on a lot of climate action kind of websites and see what other communities are doing in that realm. And I really appreciate, number one, all the communities that are on these discussions. I see Basalt with us. I see, Snowmass was with us in Aspen last time. I'm not sure who's on this time, but yeah, we've got to all work together locally, but we'll make a note to look worldwide at some other solutions, but send us your thoughts on communities you think are doing great things out there that we can learn from. And what other information is it that you guys need that you feel are gaps in the information we have right now to try to help us achieve our vision?
Hey, Cindy, it's Nancy. I am on the line. I didn't mean to imply that I'm looking for a cookie cutter community. I think the diversity brings a lot of richness to the culture of our town. And I think that's one of the really unique things about Aspen. But I think if we want to maintain the character of the community, we need to clearly state what the goals are and how, there are some expectations of the trade-off of having all this beautiful public lands. People need to respect it. And it feels like it's getting out of control. And given, I kind of separate these as two problems. One is the immediate concerns of the COVID pandemic, which has just upended everything. And then the broader picture about, will Aspen predominant industry 10 years from now still be a ski town? Or is it changing? Because we seem to have more guests coming in the summer even than in the winter. And so, but I think there is, with anything that's available provided by the community, there's a responsibility. And especially with just this huge influx of people. And I shared a comment to Suzanne, we're seeing just in our little neighborhood over by Smuggler, people are coming in and paying exorbitant rents to stay in the community throughout the rest of the year. So I'm wondering what's going to happen in the shoulder season. Are we going to actually see a drop off? And how many people can our infrastructure actually support? Because it puts so much demand on the infrastructure.
Can I pick up on that, Cindy? It's Michael. Thank you. To Nancy's question and point, I think we kind of talk about two things as if they are the same, but they're perhaps different and worthy of unpacking. And that is, what do we want to define the Aspen experience as from an economic perspective, and what is defining it from an economic perspective? I think, we hear all the time, last two Aspen area community plans say, we want to be a resort-based economy. We want to be a tourism-driven economy. Like, if we were just to look at the jobs that people are doing, does it reflect that? And I know it sounds like, because I'm a ski-co guy, that I'm advocating for the resort side here. I'm not. I'm just asking that we unpack things to understand, what are we today, and how did we get there, and do we like that? And I think we tend to view that primarily through the lens of just aggregated impacts. So people say, well, there's too much traffic, and anything that might generate more traffic, we want to push back against. But I think we could, I know that we did that cell phone traffic study. It was not as successful as some people hoped, but I still think that data could be analyzed in a way based on the departure, the different zones that the valley was broken up into. You could see traffic patterns and how they disperse once they're inside the roundabout, and how they disperse throughout the county. I think that Nancy's question is kind of maybe has two parts. What's the primary attraction for people wanting to be in Aspen? And I think Greg hit on the fact that, look, it's a great place to quarantine is the current kind of primary attraction in many ways. But also then the second question is, an economy is incredibly powerful. So the second home industry draws people away from certain sectors and into others based on how much money. I know people who were retail managers and were making, a low six figure, say $110,000 a year managing a retail store. And now they can go and be a house manager and just take care of 4 homes and make the equivalent amount of money and have a lot more flexibility. And it's a very rational economic and lifestyle decision they've made. The economic power of that industry like has all sorts of effects that I think dramatically impact community character. And I'm not saying for the bad. Like, so for the people I know who were managing retail, who now are house managers for 4 big second homes, they love that shift. They get to pick their daughter up from daycare every day. It's more family time. But again, like the power of an economic sector is multifaceted.
Right. Are there, let's see. Yeah, so Zach has put a document on the screen, shared a document, just to kind of bring us back to the concept of common themes, trying to pull together a common vision to lead us as we move forward. And there's been a lot of talk about second homes and their impacts, and not just looking at aggregated impacts, but really unpacking them, as Michael likes to say, and to better understand how to move forward. And I think we've heard a lot about that. It's really is something we will need to focus on, and perhaps it will result in the need for a separate discussion. But just to bring it back to the overall concept of common themes, I think we've identified several relating to carrying capacity and community character, and climate. Climate is clearly a key factor here. Is there anything else that we need to add? We before we started, today staff took a look at some of the pre-recorded vision statements that we had, and started to pull together some common themes here. I've just mentioned a few: climate action, limiting our footprint, preservation of several things that make our community what it is today, including, well, there are a myriad of components, including preservation of open lands and ranching heritage, and some of the things that we've done right to date, and some of the things that we should be looking at moving forward. At this point, unless anybody else has anything to add in terms of common themes or themes that we think need to be reiterated moving forward, we will come back to you. Suzanne has her hand raised, so I'm going to let Suzanne jump in to help articulate here.
I don't have the hand up, the hand raised symbol this time like I did last time, but this apparently works. Some things that have come to mind in the last few minutes as we've been talking about what are about to be the immediate effects that we are going to have to grapple with because of the pandemic. More people wanting to come here, more people, we mentioned last time, or someone mentioned last time, that there's an awareness now that more and more people are wanting to come here from other states to rent, instead of a month as usual, 6 months or maybe a year. And so I have this question of Greg. While we are looking at, in general, this group is tasked with looking into the long term, but what can we do as a community short term to educate people who are about to move here into what our culture is now and what our concerns are now, specifically with health? How can we help those people assimilate into what I love the diversity that's brought and appreciate that. But right now, we're going to be affected, it sounds like big time, immediately. Our schools, never mind all of the other services. So that's one question that I have of Greg and Cindy. The other thing that I'd like to underline is that Sarah Garton talked about the cozy point and the value of that. And I've been thinking recently that, while many more of us are gardening and our gardening period of time is pretty short here, I think I understand that there's some greenhouses that are being built maybe at Cozy Point, or maybe it's just that Cooper Means works at Cozy Point and he's building greenhouses elsewhere. But could we as a community start to emphasize local food production more so that we can be educated about how we could do that more, and how so few of us are trying to stay away from the grocery stores now? What else could we do to expand our growing season and learn more about how to do that and provide food for ourselves? Speaking of climate change.
Ellen, did you want me to answer? I've got some quick answers. I don't want to dominate it here. I'm sure it's a great discussion point Suzanne has made, but I have a couple ideas and just what we can all do. And I'd be happy to share that now. It's up to you.
Hey, Greg, Cindy, I think that those are great questions for all of us to think about, Suzanne. And I'm not sure that we've got close to 20 minutes left. I want to make sure that we cover, I think they're great questions and I have them down, and I think we ought to look at those. I think the immediate issue of the pandemic is something we're all going to have to start thinking about, and I'd love for Greg to think more about that with his fellow commissioners. As far as the local food production, yeah, let's talk about it as part of our vision.
Yes, that's fine.
But yeah, right now, I think I just want to take advantage of all the people. There's 19 people left on the Zoom today. And if anybody, I feel like there's so much common ground in what we've heard today. But is there anybody who's just not agreeing and feels that we are off base and that we're looking in the wrong direction and need to take a further step back and look differently at our future? I just really want to hear from people who haven't spoken up yet. If there's anyone on the call, and then if we have a second, I would certainly love to play Langdon's video again if we have time, because he really put some great thought into it. Anybody brave enough on the line to hop on and say that they've disagreed with anything that they've heard or seen today that we need to pay attention to, because there's been a lot of consensus here. I don't think anybody's agreeing on how we get there, but there's been a lot of consensus. So wondering if there's anything we've missed or anything that just needs to be said.
Again, if you're not a panelist, if you're just watching as an attendee currently, you don't have the ability to mute or unmute yourself. If you raise your hand, I will unmute you, or you can indicate in chat that you'd wish to talk as well, and we will get you.
Cindy, this is Meg.
Hi, Meg.
Hi. I'm taking us a little away from the agenda topics that we explored today. And of course, I agree with so many of them. I want at some point to make sure that we do get back, excuse me, to discuss a little bit more about the future of TDRs, and that relates to second homeowners. And of course, from the Starwoods point of view, the second homeowners do, as I've said before, contribute so much to the culture and so forth. So I want us just not to leave that whole topic, please.
Definitely. Thanks, Meg. I'm glad you're still here and listening. I think that, yeah, we have TDRs and house size as definitely a category to talk about as we get into the specifics of growth management. So we are not going to leave that topic aside, and I think we'll definitely get back to it. Thank you for bringing that up and representing that that group of homeowners in the Valley. And yeah, I hope we hear more from you on that. And that might just lead me into discussion about our next meeting. And our next meeting is going to be about the benefits or the objectives we're trying to achieve, which I think a lot of these common themes are going to force us as staff to look at what does that relate to in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And we'll bring back some hopefully digested thoughts here to walk us into a discussion in the next about where we're going next with, if we were going to use our traditional type of growth management, what are the objectives? Like today, what is the point system point to that we're trying to get to? We could start that way, but we also want to keep open minds to the fact that maybe our growth management system and the scoring system and all of that is outdated and we need to look at something new. But how do we look at the objectives? So we're going to ask people for the next meeting to really think about the specific objectives of what we're trying to get at with growth management. Take your vision and turn it into something pretty tangible that we're looking for in the community. And we'll go from there. And I know that's a tough question to ask, but if you want to talk to any of us, please give us a call and we can explain the growth management system a little bit more and what we're trying to achieve. But we're also going to send out some work so that you can take a look at the way we've been thinking about it and have something to hold on to and think about and digest before the next meeting. And then, Zach, I didn't want to miss, I think it was Susan Welch who had a question about affordable housing.
Yeah, and I took that down in the notes. That kind of seemed like one of the questions that we would be asking for the community benefits portion, because it's what happens to a house after the employee leaves the house, which I think will come into the deed restrictions and stuff that we discussed in community benefits. I don't know if we have an answer for it now.
Okay, but we have the question down. Okay, good.
Yep, I have it down in our notes. I just wanted to add, piggyback on what Cindy was saying there. So Ellen, Cindy, and I are going to get together. We're going to put all of our notes together, our common themes, all of that, and we'll be sending it out to you so that we can kind of have that cohesive vision of what we're working towards. And so expect to see that email from me. It'll have a couple attachments to it. I'm also going to put it on the website, so you'll be able to find it in 2 places. But that will really set the platform for that next meeting that we have. If you'd like any examples of the current tangibles that we get from growth management to work towards its objectives, please feel free to reach out to us as well. And we can get you a couple of objectives just in case you want to clarify the discussion a little bit further before next week. And then if we don't have any other comments, I think Ellen's going to speak, but then we'll take a chance to watch Langdon's video without all of the technical difficulties.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly that there's some great conversation going on in the chat bar, and we will try to capture some of that if there hasn't been an opportunity to get some of those points out verbally. We'll go ahead and capture what we might have missed in the chat bar and include those in our notes. So yeah, go ahead with that. Go ahead and let's run Langdon's video again.
So I'm going to take this as an opportunity to show you how to get to our website again, just because I believe reiterating is good. It goes away. Yep. So if you go to pitkincounty.com, planning, zoning, building button, the growth management public outreach information. And then down here at the bottom, we have all of the citizen input. Just really quickly to address Meg, we do have TDR separated out as a whole separate discussion. So that tab is there. We have all the information relevant to it as well. So you can see that that will be a discussion in and of itself. And then we have Langdon's video here.
Hello, I am Langdon Dresser, a senior at Colorado Rocky Mountain School and co-president of the student body there. I am quite interested in the current public outreach Pitkin County growth management process because as a 17-year-old who hopes to live a long time in our special valley, I think creating an equitable, maintainable, and robust regional quality of life and economy for the future, as well as meeting our climate action objectives, are important issues to address now. For several years, I have been a volunteer and student at ACES and had the opportunity to learn about and support climate action in relation to this valley and the current use of the landfill. Looking at the current research done by the City of Aspen Climate Action Office, I have learned about some of the possible reductions that can be implemented in a new and revised growth management initiative, such as mandating high efficiency space and water heating equipment and high efficiency air conditioning in building codes, implementing technology to greatly reduce the energy consumption of unoccupied second homes, and requiring energy efficient upgrades for rental units. Using these techniques, according to their work, has the ability to reduce greenhouse gases by up to 86% over a 50-year period, which is part of my lifetime's hope for our Roaring Fork Valley. I have also had the opportunity to learn about the usage and mitigation programs at the landfill. Increasing the adoption and use of these mitigation solutions has two important outcomes. First, it reduces the emissions produced by the landfill and the vehicles serving it, and improving our air quality. And secondly, it reduces the amount of waste that enters the landfill, providing the landfill a longer lifespan. I am also interested in the current Pitkin County growth management process because I think the judicious use of TDRs has been a successful program, and I am curious to learn about how that growth management system could benefit Pitkin County and its residents and the economy into the future. My vision for the future of Pitkin County and the Valley as a whole is to continue supporting a world-class tourism destination through allowing residents full-time and part-time to have the flexibility to create and have their own desired home living styles and to thrive in the way that they wish within the necessary goals of an equitable, maintainable, and robust economy, as well as adhering to current greenhouse gas reduction goals. Just how to achieve those things is going to take a lot of work by all of us.
Okay, Zach, did we get that in its entirety?
Yes. I do have one personal request for all of you who participated in the discussion today. If you would mind turning your video on, I'd like to take a picture of the group. I think it's good for posterity. Great.
Look at your camera, Cindy. Look at your camera. You're looking up. Your camera's lower than that. Look down a little bit. I'll set you up. No, well, don't shrink, but just look down. Tilt down a little bit.
I got it already. I think
okay. You got her. Okay. Here I am directing the shot. Sorry, just in my DNA.
We're going with history because in the energy code meeting, she's looking on her phone as well. So we're just trying to be consistent with how we've been the whole time. Great, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everybody. It's a really good to convene here today. Thank you for your time and energy. And as Cindy said, we will reconvene next Thursday from 10 till noon, same time, same place. And we'll be trying to pull together a collective visions for community objectives when we're managing growth here. We'll get into more specifics about what we're aiming towards. So thank you. I think that's all we have as staff. Cindy, Zach, anything else before we conclude?
No, just a big thank you. And any thoughts you have along the way throughout the week, let us know. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. And as I said earlier, we are always accepting input. So feel free to submit that to us at any time, whenever you feel like. If you have any questions, we're always available. So please feel free to email us or call us. And thank you again, and hope you have all have a happy 4th of July.
And I guess I have one last thing to add. If this is really intended we want to reach out to a really broad group and anyone in the community who's interested in participating. So if you know of somebody who should be a part of this conversation or would like to be and isn't aware of what we're doing, please reach out and ask them to join in the discussion. So with that, I think that's it for me. Take care.